What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Zamboni. I am an herbalist and astrologer, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. As always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sending me a tip via Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for hitting this little save button in the corner. Thank you for sending it to a friend. Thank you for coming in and getting a reading. Thank you for joining the membership. Thank you for doing all these things and being here with me one more time. Thank you. Let's talk about the let's talk about the astrology of the week ahead. So, this is our last week of Aquarius season. At the end of the week, then we will see the sun move into Pisces. So happy birthday to Pisces, of course. Happy birthday. I'm so glad that you made it around another time. This week, I feel like that's going to be a pretty good look for the sun. The sun is hella uncomfortable and has been all month. The sun in Aquarius is generally uncomfortable. This is a position which is not super fun for the sun. Anytime really. The sun rules Leo, and Leo is opposite to Aquarius, so this is the sun as far as from home as possible. This is the sun. So the sun, wants to, it's like this little light of mine, right? It's the thing that wants to shine out into the world. It has to do with the self, the source, the light. And whenever I talk about the sun, I tend to talk a lot about personal sovereignty or personal health and vitality or these kinds of things that, an individual who has eyes, who is a person inside of there somewhere, that kind of thing that wants to come out. That is what I generally talk about when I think of the sun. The sun in Aquarius, gets a little headier rather than heart-centered. The sun and Leo tend to be associated with heart stuff. The same way with the eyes and this sort of stuff. You can see if somebody's crazy if you look in their eyes, right? And that, so then we can talk about Chinese medicine and Shen disturbance and that sort of stuff. So, which is all associated with the heart. I'm going to run out of time if I try to talk about that. But, so we get into heart stuff this way, and that's where the sun really does well, is by sort of fortifying heart things, the heart of the lion, right? In Aquarius, it gets a little heady. It gets a little sort of, we've got Saturn rulership here, and so we start to think about efficiency. We start to think about systems. One of Aquarius's problems, if Aquarius has a problem, then it is to see the forest and to not be able to see the trees, to not be able to see the family of birds that lives in one particular family of birds that lives in one particular tree, right? And the localized meaning that's so inherent and important to that. Aquarius can sometimes which is very important at times, especially when we're talking about systems, dynamics, and this kind of thing, but it can kind of miss the personally important or the locally important or locally meaningful piece. And so that is largely what we're going to see happening this week. Is we're going to see big Aquarius themes, big, looking at these larger systems dynamics and kind of missing what is personally important to the individual. And so that's part of the reason why the sun is so uncomfortable in this situation, because we've got the sun in Aquarius, not only ruled by Saturn, but also present with Saturn. And so it's going to get pretty Saturn-y when it comes to that sort of personally sovereign kind of piece. We find the personally sovereign having to deal with policy, or having to deal with rules and management or systems, or having to follow rules that one might not necessarily want to for whatever reason. So we're going to be seeing that kind of stuff take place here. We've got the full moon in Leo this week. So the full moon is going to be in Leo opposite to the sun in Aquarius. And so that sort of centers that dynamic. It centers the Leo Aquarius heart-centered versus head-centered kind of that dynamic and it's an opposition. So we can see conflict or difficulty that wants to show up in this sort of situation. Now, the thing that is happening here as well is that, so that's the main situation as far as the lunation is concerned, but all of the rest of the planets are in Capricorn or Pisces or Taurus if you're Uranus, right? So Capricorn and Pisces Aquarius. So they are on opposite sides of Aquarius. So they each are adjacent to Aquarius and therefore cannot see it. They are in a blind spot relative to both Aquarius and to Leo. So there's this major Leo Aquarius drama that's sort of taking up all of the space. That's what we get to see all the time. That's the sort of stuff that we see in the media. That's the sort of publicly lived things, even for people who we kind of know, who are not like media spectacle types, like the neighbors or the homies or whatever, but like we still don't necessarily see what happens in their bedroom or whatever, right? People who still, we see their public persona. That stuff is likely to be on this kind of sun Leo, moon Leo situation. That's going to be involved in that dynamic, right? That's the stuff we can see. What we can't see, what's in the blind spot, is Jupiter in Pisces, is Venus and Mars in Capricorn. Now, Venus and Mars in Capricorn, that's really interesting this week, especially because Mars is going to actually catch up to Venus. It's not very often that Mars applies to Venus this way. So if we think about average speed, Venus typically moves much faster than Mars does. Venus can move almost up to 2 degrees in a day. Mars never gets that fast. Mars usually kind of hangs out at around a half a degree a day, and that's like a fast-moving Mars. And so this fast-moving Mars that we currently have is coming up to conjoin Venus, who is moving especially slow because we're coming off of this Venus retrograde. And so this is a rare condition where we've got Mars, who is all power in Capricorn, right? Mars loves being in Capricorn. This is a super effective, happening kind of Mars. Mars needs sometimes is parameters and structures in order to make sure that the thing happens properly. There's a precision to this kind of Mars. Good condition in Capricorn. Then we add Mars applying to a benefic at the same time. This definitely looks like a very strongly empowered Mars. This looks very good for the Mars things. If you're looking to launch an offensive of some sort, maybe you are 2-3, right? So let's think about Saturn and the Sun, right? We're going to have to be thinking about boundaries in some ways, borders, ways like you shall not pass this line, right? And so then if somebody passes that line, it's like, now we have to fight, right? And so this Mars is going to be really willing to fight in order to maintain that boundary, especially with this Capricorn situation. And then, so there's this heart context that the Sun really cares about, but feels disempowered around, right? At the same time, Venus and Mars are also very strongly heart-centered. I talk about the heart a lot with them. Generally, when I talk about the heart with Venus and Mars, I'm thinking something more emotional rather than central. I'm thinking of it in the sense of like, how do things feel? How do things feel in my body? How do things feel in my mind? And how is this naturally going to express itself in body and in word or facial expression, however I express my things, creative expression, right? That's typically how I like to think about Venus and Mars in a heart-centered context. So Venus and Mars are going to be exactly conjunct this in Capricorn of the lunar Leo, opposite Saturn and the Sun in Aquarius. So this sort of like feels like I've been talking about that around like personal stakes, right? This feeling of something that matters so very deeply to me, something that I care about deeply because my body is involved, because I have skin in the game in some kind of way, because maybe one of my relationships is deeply implicated in some kind of way, right? I have a personal stake in the situation, and that is likely to motivate some important things. But like I said, this is behind the scenes. This is bedroom dynamic, right? This is something that we don't necessarily see in the public domain. What we see in the public is Saturn and Sun versus Moon and Leo, right? That's the dynamic. So we see rules going on here, and we see The personally sovereign likely having to submit to the rulership of the management or the official whatever, right? But what we see going on behind closed doors, and we can remember that Pluto is also in Capricorn, very good at hiding things, making things occult, or occluded. Then we've got that dynamic in Capricorn, and we've also got Jupiter in Pisces, also in a blind spot from Leo and Aquarius. And so that is likely to think outside the box. It's going to want to imagine something more delicious, imagine something that is more hopeful, more meaningful, that feels really, ooh, in some kind of way, that matters in some kind of important way. And we see that sort of beginning to take root, perhaps even as a result of the flashbang drama that's happening in Leo and Aquarius. It's pretty interesting. Now, we can definitely expect, because the resistance happening behind closed doors, it's still going to look like Saturn in all of the things. It's still going to outwardly feel like Saturn in a lot of ways. But, this gets into the whole like living into the cracks kind of situation. You know what I mean? Like you can pave sidewalks all you want, but that's not going to stop the dandelions from growing up through the cracks. And then if you leave those dandelions there, or whatever weeds they are, right? We can think with the song line of the weeds. Which kind of weed are you? Personally, I'm a dandelion, but, follow your heart, whatever's good for you. I know some folks who are poison ivy, and I know some folks who are milkweed, and I know, like what's your weed? Comment in the comments. Let me know what your weed is. But as the weeds grow, then their roots get down underneath the sidewalk, and if that goes on, for a while, and you don't sort of pull those weeds up and everything, then those roots get strong, and then they go on to crack the sidewalk, which seemed so sturdy and so strong. But those dandelions, which just came up in the cracks, and which were like, okay, you can have that over there, but here I am over here, loving the way that I live, continuing to drink the sun the way that I do. Of course, I'm still thinking about dandelion and that beautiful yellow sunny flower, right? And the wish that you get with the dandelions as well, right? When they get all puffy and you blow them out and you get a wish for that, then and that kind of wishing on the crack shows a lot of potential. Something to think with. Thank y'all for being here. Look forward to seeing you next week. Don't forget to check out the membership. Don't forget to send me a tip via Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. Don't forget to send me not a DM, but a comment about what is. Thank y'all for being here. I look forward to seeing you next week.